This episode of Places She Shapes is sponsored by JAC Project Management. Tamsin has spent her career stepping into rooms, building sites and roles where women are still too often outnumbered. Fiercely independent from a young age, she found her way into civil engineering after being told that trades weren't for girls. Today, she's Senior Technical Manager at Wates Development. In this episode, Tamsin talks about resilience, grief, confidence, and what it takes to keep showing up in an industry that still has room to change.
Quiet, please.
Tamsin, hi, welcome to Places She Shapes at Abbey Road Studios. Thank you for being here.
For having me.
So you are Senior Technical Manager at Wates Land and Development. Can you tell me a little bit about Wates and what your role is?
So the Wates Group is a large construction company. I work in a business unit which predominantly focuses on development from a land acquisition side through to planning, and I support on all the engineering elements, support our planners, tell them what's possible in terms of build.
Amazing. Can you tell me a little bit about what you were like as a young girl?
I think a lot of people would probably say fiery, and I'm not sure that has overly changed. I had a bit of a mixed childhood, I would say. I had some real sad times, but also some absolutely great times. And I was quite fiercely independent. I think that would be my main trait.
Why do you think you were independent?
Well, so my dad left the country when I was about 7. He moved to America. And so I was predominantly brought up by my mum, who is also a fierce woman, and she single-handedly paid for me to go to private school until I was 16.
Wow.
Which, on a single income salary is really impressive. And she bred into me that you need to be able to support yourself and any dependence you might have, with or without a partner. So that was my main driver up until I felt like I could support myself. That was my main driver. I've got to be able to do this by myself. And that really took me from childhood to adulthood.
Where do you think that fiery piece came from? Obviously, and you said your mum was fiery as well. Where do you think she got it from?
Probably my grandma. She was an absolutely cracking character. I used to go see her in my teenage years. She was unfortunately in a care home, but she would say, "Oh, how many boyfriends have you got?" I'd say, "Well, one, grandma." She went, "Well, one." That's a bit disappointing. She was she took no show prisoners. She would tell me that when she met my granddad, he said, "Oh, I'm going to marry you one day," and she went, "No, I don't like blondes. Thank you," and walked off. And they ended up being married for 50 years afterwards. So she was, she didn't mince her words, and she got on with life how she wanted to.
So it's come down the family,
I
that
think so,
fiery
yes.
trait.
Yes, 100%.
And why did your mum think it was so important for you to have that education up to 16?
I think when my dad left, he'd got the family into quite a significant amount of debt, and she had to pay for the house, keep us in school, and handle everything herself. And I think that's really, really where it came from. That was the importance that you shouldn't be reliant on anyone else, be that wrongly or rightly. You should be able to both financially and emotionally support yourself.
Yeah. And she had a big emphasis on education?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. She was, I imagine she probably wanted me to be a doctor. She was a pathologist, and she used to bring home slides of people's brains and livers and say, "Oh, look at this, look at this, what we found." And, were you interested in it? You're going to be a doctor now? No, I'm not going to be a doctor. So I slightly rebelled against that idea, but she was very much into further education. That was important for a woman to be able to, handle herself and take a career where she wanted to.
So you knew you didn't want to be a doctor.
Yes.
What did you want to be, do you think, when you were...
I've always been fascinated at how stuff works. It's not super cool, but I used to spend a lot of time watching how stuff was made, understanding the processes in factories, or understanding how bridges were engineered. I used to be fascinated by documentaries. I think I was of the generation where the Sky and cable TV had just come out, and so there was so much to watch, and so many different shows that you probably never would have had. That was my fascination.
So what did you think you were going to do?
So I had when I moved from private school to sixth form, I really struggled because I was never felt like I was well off enough to be at private school. At some point, my dad was living in a caravan before he left the country. And we'd get dropped off in a Jaguar XK8, but from the caravan and then back too. So it was all a bit of a facade. And then yeah,
You were interested in how things were
yeah, how
made.
things are made.
Yeah.
Well, I thought, when I started to struggle at school, I had to get outrageously high A levels, A's and B's, and I really thought this isn't for me. I'm not actually as smart as I've always been told. Maybe I need to come up with a bit of a backup plan here because I am still fiercely independent and I still want to be able to support myself. So I thought to myself, I'd quite like to be an electrician. That's something. Carpentry or electrician were my first thoughts. I thought no one else does that. I could do that really well. I'd, be my own niche. And unfortunately, my mum at the time, probably flippantly, and if I said it to her now, she would die of embarrassment. But she said, be an electrician is not a job for a girl. You need to look for something. I haven't paid for 16 years of private education for you to go and waste it all on just, becoming a trade. Whereas, I do often think now that imagine how well I would have done as one of the quite pioneering first female electricians. She's
Absolutely.
she'd have no concerns about supporting me, I'm sure. Not that she does.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I had to really think on my feet then and come up with something that was a bit suited her, but also was a little bit more about what I wanted to do, which was the building element, which was the seeing how things were made. And yeah, that's why I chose civil engineering.
So you mentioned this change from private education up to 16 and then sixth form and not struggling a little bit. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
So as I said, I didn't really feel like I fit in at private school. It was quite awkward for me. There were kids with horses and helicopters, and that wasn't where we were. We were at risk of losing our house and things during the time. But then when I went to public school, I was kind of the posh kid from private school. So, and it also probably didn't help that my first day, my mum sent me in a full suit to sixth form, which was a little
What sort of suit?
like a full grey trouser suit.
Trouser suit, nice.
Yeah. So I went in with power, but maybe just a bit too much for the sixth form level.
So you did A levels
Yeah.
and struggled a bit more with them academically than you thought you would?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, very much so. And I think that's probably what you pay for with private school is the you do learn how to research stuff for yourself, and they do really push you, but at the same time you are handheld. They want you to get good grades.
Yes.
And then obviously at sixth form as well, it's very much, well, you either work or you don't, but that's up to you. That's your future.
Yeah.
We're not here to hold your hands. So that was a big transition for me.
Yeah. So electricians off the table.
Yeah.
So what do we do next?
So I was working in a pub, as I think lots of us do in those formative years. Some great times, and we used to have a local who came in. I think he was a professor at Cranfield University, and I said, I'm really interested in engineering, but I don't really know what I can do. I know I want to go to university. I know there's so many options, but what are they? And so he did talk to me about what marine engineering was, what mechanical engineering was, all of the different options. And I was like, right, that's it. I've always been fascinated at how bridges support themselves. That's a really niche thing to be fascinated by. And I was like, right, that's what I want to do. So I'm going to do civil engineering, and I'm going to learn how structures and big infrastructure's built.
Okay. And where did you do civil engineering?
At the University of Surrey in Guildford. To be fair, I actually grew up in Milton Keynes and then went to the University of Surrey and never really left. Well, I've bought a house in Hampshire because, Surrey prices are outrageous, but I've never really left the general area.
Okay. And how was the experience?
Yeah, really good. It was fascinating, actually, on a course of 150 people, 5 women. For 4 years, and then to be fair, we lost a few of them over the course of the years as well. So yeah, I think probably 3 or 4 of us. I'm probably wrong there. It's probably more like 8 started and 5 finished.
Okay.
But yeah, so we were very outnumbered. throughout our university days. So I actually ended up living after university with 3 boys for a year or so, because they were my mates. They were the people I'd kind of bonded with on the course. So that was some really interesting times there.
Sure, sure. Why do you think there were so few girls on the course, and do you think that's different now?
I hope it's different now. I'm pessimistically not sure. I don't think girls are as encouraged to, or back when I was younger, it wasn't something that was. You didn't see any women doing it, and you didn't think, oh, that's something I can do. I'm a big believer in you have to see something to really believe you can do it. And when there's not that role model or not that, not that figurehead, it's really hard to know that that's an option for you.
Yeah.
You know, for example, I wouldn't have ever thought I could be a professional footballer because women's football was never a big thing when I was younger. Nowadays, I'd hope that I could feel like that, and I could.
Yeah.
Right, I'm going to do that. I just can see people.
So, if it hadn't been for that guy in the pub,
Yeah.
could have been a different story.
Yeah, 100%. I really don't know what I really put me on a course, and I, looking back on it, can't have appreciated that enough because I was so lost at that time. I get overwhelmed quite easily, and I was taught when I was younger, take things step by step. And I felt so overwhelmed about life. What am I going to do? Where am I going to go? And he allowed me just to break it down to that first step of, this is what you want to do.
Finish university. What's the first job?
So my first job, I did a year out or a year placement as part of my university with Keller, who are a big groundworks company, and they set up a subsidiary company. I always find that one hard, to do the monitoring on the Crossrail project. So I was looking at ground and structural movement from Paddington to Farringdon, and I was helping install, probably sometimes see them today, little prisms and like total stations around so we could look at the movement of the buildings while we tunnelled underneath them. Absolutely fascinating. My job predominantly was to try get permission from people to let us into their basements to install the equipment, which was great. I got shouted at by a lot of people, so at that informative age it made me realise what construction really is. But also, I got to coordinate. I had a team of like 5 guys, and I'd be helping them set up the site. They'd do all the work, if I'm honest. I was very much the administrator. But yeah, in my informative years, that was really fascinating to see how that all worked. I'd say my favourite, one of my favourite bits of work is we were looking at some ground monitoring in Hyde Park as we tunnelled underneath, and we had some inclinometers which measure the change in slope down like a plastic tubing. And so we're sitting there in the middle of the night with a reel, and effectively, from anyone else, it looks like you're fishing in a hole in the middle of Hyde Park. And we got stopped by the police, asked what we were doing, questioned, had to prove what we were doing, or because we'd done it for 3 nights and our backs hurt, so we just got some deck chairs to sit on. So actually, when you think about it, the poor policemen were thinking, what is going
So
on?
look a little bit odd.
Yeah. Just 2 people fishing in the middle of Hyde Park.
So how long did you work on that for?
I did a year's placement, and then I kind of did a bit of ad hoc work over my last year because the project was in full swing. But unfortunately, I wasn't then kept on for that role afterwards, and I had to go and find a new role when I graduated.
Okay. And how did you go about that?
Well, so I was actually, at the time, I didn't have a clue. I just thought, oh, I've lost out on an opportunity. That's fine. I'll go find something else. Now, one of the things I struggled with in my undergraduate placement year was I didn't feel like I was given enough site experience. I felt I was quite pigeonholed. And at the time, I thought, right, well, I'm just going to go get another job where I can work on site and get my experience, because I've always thought that having the experience on site makes you a better manager because you know what conditions people are working in. And, I remember being out on site, wiring data logger boxes in the rain, pouring hands. Your hands look like you've been swimming for days, trying to use one of those biometric things to get on site when you've got awful hands. It's impossible. So it's silly things like that I feel like you learn from that real world life experience. So I was lucky enough that I found a job with a company called Geotechnical Observations. I absolutely loved it because of looking back on it, some of the projects, I was probably a bit grumpy at the time, but I think that's just me. But looking back on it, I think how lucky was I to get involved in all those things. So we were involved when the railway at Dawlish slipped. They had instruments there to have a little look at the ground movement. I got to help do some work on a roundabout up in the Lake District. Just all these random little jobs, but it was such good experience.
Can we just go back to the pigeonhole
Yes.
bit? Can you just talk me through that a bit more?
So there was myself and a male undergraduate, and he was very much it was meant to be a rotation. So you do the office stuff and then you go out to do the site work. And it never happened for me. I didn't end up going out to
Just
do
in your
the
sort of
site
work
work.
experience
Yes.
bit.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
It was, and I probably don't help myself. Sometimes I could be quite clumsy and things. So I remember I'd got to work one day and I'd fallen up the escalators to try and get to the office. And it was the day I was meant to be driving a van for the first time. And the boss went, "Oh, you can't get yourself up an escalator. I don't think you'll be driving one of our vans for a while." So it was never done. Never felt like it was done because I was a woman, but it was kind of, I was put into she's really good at organising. Let's get her
Yeah.
to do that.
Okay.
She's bossy. She'll go tell people what to do, kind of thing. Which, is it's good to have your special skill.
Yeah, yeah.
But I would have liked to have been allowed to try a few more things at that early age. I feel like that could have opened a few doors. The person I did that placement with now runs their own business in that sector, and I think, imagine what I could have done if I felt like I'd been given the option.
Yeah, absolutely. So take me back. How long were you in that role for?
The site-based role,
Yeah.
a good few years, 2 or 3 years, and we did lots of little projects. Probably the most interesting and full of amusing stories, as you can probably imagine, was the sewer work under Oxford Street, especially in the run up to Christmas. So I was the only girl, I was the only female down there, and we had two teams of subcontractors, and they would fight like cat and dogs, and I would just be standing in the middle, grumpy.
What were they fighting about?
I'll just like delivery of work. Oh, who's bought the bolts? Who's got to do that? Who's got to tidy up? Silly things that I had no time for as far as I was concerned. And I remember one evening I really lost my temper. There was lots of swearing on the radio, and I was still quite young, so I didn't feel. I wouldn't have called anyone out publicly. So on the radio they were swearing and all sorts, and I got a little bit upset. It was 5 weeks of nights, so you're already on a
Tired and emotional.
yeah. And I stormed out the sewer, threw my hard hat across Oxford Street, and stormed up the road in a white suit. People going, "Oh, is there a bomb?" I was like, "Well, if there is, I'm not running." Really grumpy. Sat in the back of my van, and about an hour later, one of the guys from the sewer appeared with a box of chicken nuggets from McDonald's as a peace offering. And it worked. That was it. I was fine then. Never lost my temper again.
What do you think those early days taught you?
I was always, if I'm honest, very well looked after on site. When I worked with guys on site, I felt like as long as I commanded myself, and sometimes it was bravado, but as long as I gave off that ability of confidence, they would listen to me and they would respect me. The amount of times that, I felt very much like people had my back. And so to me, it was a bit of a shock when I went in the office, where you get all the office politics. The thing I most enjoyed about site was none of that. Everyone, if they don't like you, will tell you. Or if they're annoyed at you, you'll know. Whereas so that was such a useful dynamic to have seen, but also the practical skills and the ability then, when I moved up into management, to be able to be like, well, of course that's going to take an extra day.
You mentioned that you moved into management, so
Yes,
I just
how I got
wondered
there.
how you got there. Did you do it on purpose, or did it happen by chance? Or
Yeah, interestingly enough, actually, it really happened by chance. So the next job I had after I'd got a bit of site experience, but it was a northern based company, and they wanted to set up a southern office. And my line manager at the time went, "Oh, you're the most bossy here. You could run that. You could get that sorted." So I ended up being, I ended up establishing an office, setting up all the policies, and helping set up that division, which was a really exciting opportunity. Bear in mind, I was 21,
Well,
22.
so super young.
What an incredible opportunity to be given. A couple years into it, though, I kind of realised that I've gone to university. I've worked really hard. I've done all the site stuff. I always wanted to be involved in pure construction, and at this time, I was very much a subcontractor of a subcontractor.
Mm.
And I was just checking expenses and seeing who'd driven their van back or who hadn't driven their van back and things. It wasn't what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I was very brave, and took a big jump, and I went from effectively divisional manager at a small company to waterproof salesperson, because I thought, you know what, this is I've got to take a punt. I can either carry on doing what I'm doing, and I'll probably get to high levels of management, but I'll have missed what I felt like I missed the middle bit.
Yeah.
Bit more learning my trade. I missed that bit. And so I decided my way to get more in front of the contractors and tier one contractors and get involved in some interesting projects was to try something different. And my mum was a sales rep, and I thought, well, it can't be that hard. I can do that. It's really hard.
So you took a bit of a step down,
Really. Yeah.
step down, pay cut.
Quite significantly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But I really had to take a bet on myself.
Okay. And how did you come to that conclusion? Because it's when you look back, it seems like the obvious thing to do, but at the time it must have been quite a difficult decision, or wasn't it not?
I felt like my time in that industry had kind of was starting to come to a close. As I said, I could carry on doing what I was doing,
Yeah.
and if I was lucky, I could go really high up. But
Yeah, but it wasn't what
it
you
wasn't for me, and it
No,
wasn't what I
okay.
wanted to do. I'd fallen into it because of my undergraduate placement year,
Yeah.
and I'd always, I'd had dreams of really being on a big construction site
Yeah.
as either client side or as the main contractor, not as the guy being shouted at for.
So what would you say to people that realise they've ended up on the wrong path somehow?
Believe in yourself and believe you can do it. While I was brought up to think money is so important, and it is important to be able to support yourself, it's not the end of the world. I managed to build my salary back up. I did have to, I was living a little bit outside of my means, and I really had to humble myself there. I'd just gone and got myself renting a 1-bed flat in Henley, and I bought myself a Z4 BMW, and I was living the best life at 22. And I suddenly realised I'm going to have to get rid of all that, and get myself a little flat,
Yeah.
and a little car, and just hunker down for a little bit to build
Yeah.
myself back up.
Yeah.
But it was so worth it.
Yeah.
Looking back.
So this was more of a sales role. Can you
Yes.
tell me a bit about that?
So I was selling waterproofing, structural below ground waterproofing, to tier one contractors and architects. So I
Okay.
got an excellent patch. I got SE1 in London.
Amazing.
I got East London, Essex, Kent. So I got some really good bits.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating. I got to learn so much, and I really had to concentrate and detail into something. So I had to understand, all of the below ground details. I had to understand how the water would move through things. So it was very technically challenging at the beginning.
And how did you find sales is very target driven? You either hit your targets or you don't.
Yes.
And I'm guessing you'd never had that kind of pressure before. You'd had different
No.
pressures, but sales is a very different route.
Yes.
And obviously you needed the technical background that you had and you learned. So how did you shift your mindset around now having a target to hit?
Yes, I found that really difficult. I probably spent too much time on the technical and went too heavy on that side.
Yeah.
Because I'd say my uniqueness was repeat business, because I wasn't very good at telling people, oh, well, you need that extra expensive product, or you need to do it twice.
You weren't
or
a good upseller.
I was not a very good upseller. I'll just put a bit of blackjack on that'll be fine. Come back to me when you got a real problem, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So people would come back to me because they trusted my guidance.
Trusted you. Yeah.
So I think that was it, really. Almost probably great that I went too heavy on the technical.
Yeah.
That was probably the only way I hit some of my targets. But it was never a big focus for me, and I really didn't enjoy it. I used to get the Sunday scaries like nobody's business, knowing that I had to ring 20 architects and ask them if I could come in to see them and talk about our new brochure.
Really?
That was really not me. And it really took a toll on my mental health after a while. But I was quite lucky that I had a little network of maybe 10, 15 architects who'd let me pop in periodically and have a coffee with them. So it took off the 3 meetings a day every day.
Pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how are you under pressure?
I'm all right under pressure. I definitely need to take a few breaths. I after having left sales went into house building, and I think that's really where I learned how to focus under pressure and how to cut out the noise.
So how did that change happen from sales to house building? Talk me through that.
Interestingly enough, I was giving somebody a CPD on waterproofing, and at the end of it, he went, "Oh, you seem to know what you're talking about. You seem to be someone who could get me from A to B." And yeah, he took a chance on me and offered me a job, which I'll be forever thankful for. My first site though was 444 units and 226 house types, so it was a baptism of fire. Not only volume of paperwork, but I went from just doing the below ground stuff to being in charge of joist designs, window schedules, truss designs. It was wild.
So what was the role that you were offered, and what was the company?
So they have great names. It used to be a design and planning executive, and it was with Taylor Wimpey. So really good company to work for,
Yeah.
and yeah, enjoyed that time there. But it made me realize. So I was in charge of not only the engineering elements but the architectural elements. Now, if you ask anybody, there's not a degree where you do engineering and architecture all in one. So you either come in with a bit of architecture, or you come in with a bit of engineering, and you've got to figure the other side of it out. It's not something you come in knowing full well. But it was a great experience. It taught me the pressure of a building site and the importance of getting things out on time. But it also showed me how everybody has their own specialisms, and actually, if you stop and listen to everybody, it makes your life a lot easier, because you can really embrace what people know. There were some brickwork details I didn't know, so I made friends with the foreman of the bricklaying company, and he went, "Oh, well, this is what I'm going to do," and I'd draw it out in a detail, and we'd be like, "Right, perfect, there we go."
Yeah.
But it was taking the time to listen to these people and not just shut them down, which a lot of people I felt did.
So just going back to that, you were doing the CPD, somebody offered you a job. You had a
Yes.
choice then, I guess. You could have stayed, or you could have
Yes.
go. Can you talk me through that decision?
Um, I really wasn't enjoying the sales role. I didn't really think I was very good at it. And as a person, I pride myself on being good at my job.
Okay.
That's something that's quite important to me. That I go to work and I try my hardest. But my mental health was really struggling. Personally, at the time, my ex-partner, he had 2 children, and we were in the midst of taking 50-50 custody. So I'd gone from no children to 2 fully formed human beings to look after, to dress, to
Wow.
wash, to feed. And so I was really struggling at home as well. So maybe on reflection, not the best time to take a career challenge on.
For season 3 of Places She Shapes, we're delighted to be supported by Cripps. Cripps is a top 100 UK law firm, working with businesses and individuals across corporate, real estate, litigation, and private client services. Cripps is passionate about solving problems, championing ambitions, making a positive, lasting difference, and is particularly proud to support female leaders, amplifying their stories to help drive meaningful change.
So I'd gone from no children to 2 fully formed human beings to look after, to dress, to
Wow.
wash, to feed. And so I was really struggling at home as well. So maybe on reflection, not the best time to take a career challenge on. But I really felt like I just had to get out of sales. I was naive. I was so naive to how easy it would be. And I take my hat off to people who do it and very successful doing it.
Yeah. So do you think that fiery little girl was somewhere in that decision making?
Yes, 100%. Yeah, she is. Yeah, she's always with me. To be fair.
So house building, how long were you doing that for?
I s- I like to think I'm still in it, although I've moved to the other side of the fence. Probably about 10 years.
Okay. And then moved to Wates?
Yes, yeah. So I really enjoyed my time in house building. One of my frustrations being on the technical side was that you were always reliant, I think in every job you are, but build the houses, commercial to place the orders, but it was always about let's get the houses built, let's get the people moving in. And I used to get annoyed that we had all these lovely green spaces and we'd spent lots of time thinking about the layout and they were always an afterthought. You put the play park in last. So when people move in, there's not those facilities there. And I wanted to take a step back from the delivery and see if I could get involved in earlier into the process. So maybe if I could change some of those things and make nicer places for people to live.
Okay. So the move was a deliberate one?
Yes, yeah, very much so. So I ended my house building career at Vistry, where we were delivering 100% affordable schemes. So I had two on just before I left, one of 50 and I think one of 40. So they were nice little schemes. And then I had a private one of 140 units as well, all at the same time. But the stress when you're in that environment, you've got 3 live projects on, 3 different site managers shouting at you, knowing where your priorities are, and it was very, very stressful.
I'm sure. Um, how Can you tell me a bit more about what your role involves now?
So I kind of take that experience of what I delivered on site, and I look at the drawings at a planning stage and try to see what is deliverable. So give you an example, a layout. We'll look at that. Say it's got 1,500 units. Are we going to be able to sell that as one big site? Maybe not in this market. Should we look at and then if we're going to sell it as lots of different parcels, what do we need to consider? How does the infrastructure need to be laid out to make that achievable? Or if we're going to sell it in one, how do we make sure our infrastructure is efficient so it's appealing to a house builder, but also make sure that it's deliverable from a planning side? I saw a lot of on the delivery side, lots of things that people say, oh, we'll do that footpath at first occupation, or we'll do that here, but they didn't actually think at that planning stage, how are you going to do that on site?
So when you moved to Wates, were you doing the role that you're doing now?
Yes.
Yeah.
So again, to be fair, externally to people, it might have looked like I take a bit of a punt. I was a senior technical manager at Vistry.
Yeah.
I just applied for a head of technical role, and a technical manager role came up at Waits. And I had a few colleagues there that I'd worked with previous roles. And I thought, I really would love to work with them again, and I want to make this different. So that was my logic for moving.
Yeah. Great. So in 2021, you suffered a big loss. Can you tell me about that?
Yes, yeah. So, partway through my house building years, it was the beginning of COVID, and I was moving between jobs. And the day COVID lockdown happened, I got a phone call saying, "Oh, I'm really sorry, but we're not going to honour the contract that we've given you. We'll pay you a week, and that's it."
So this is early 2020.
Beginning of 2020. So, and I remember it because it was my birthday when they rang me.
Great.
Yeah, lovely birthday present that was. And that was so scary. As I said, my mum had brought me up with, you need to be able to support yourself and any dependence you might have. And I thought, oh my God, I've lost a job. At the time, my partner had his 2 kids who were living with us 50/50. It was so stressful. I was very lucky that in the October, so this was the March, in the October, I managed to get an opportunity with Bloor Homes as a technical coordinator, and I was very excited about that. Later that year, I'd say November, I found out I was pregnant, and quite significantly pregnant, if that is such a thing.
Okay.
I was like 4 or 5 months.
So
Yes.
an unplanned.
Unplanned, unknown, absolute panic stations moment. I've only just started a new job,
Yeah.
so you're not entitled to any maternity or any help.
Still trying to make a good impression.
And still, yeah, very much so. It was terrifying.
Yeah.
And I was so lucky. They were so kind about it. And because at the time we were in and out of lockdown, it was very much, if you were pregnant, go home, you can't be here.
Oh,
So I was
yes,
just
of
sent
course,
home on
yeah.
the same day.
Yeah, of course.
And told to work from home for the rest of my pregnancy.
And how that's very late to discover that you're
Yes.
pregnant. How did you feel about it?
I was quite terrified. If I'm honest, you can appreciate we've got two children in the house already.
How old were
On
they?
mine, they were at this time, 5 and 7,
Okay, so
maybe.
still little.
So still very young, and it had been difficult. It's always difficult for step parents. You know, you're not the parent at the end of the day, and I feel like you either have to be a friend or a parent. But sometimes, you know, my famous line was, "The rules might be different at Mummy's house, but this is my house, so
Yeah,
we respect people here."
yeah, very difficult.
Yeah, it's just a bit of a hard. You've got to, you know, all very, very political. And yeah, so that was a really, really difficult time. And then I was very nervous about it, but I thought, as with most things in my life, same with this, I thought, you know what, just feet first, dive in, go for it.
Yeah,
So I did that, and kind of bite me a little bit, if I'm honest. So 3 days before I was due to have a sweep, to try, so his due date, um, I had some low movement, and it's something I'd never thought about, if I'm honest. At the time, I had always thought, you get pregnant. My mum had kind of said, "Well, if you get pregnant, that's your career over," and that was the only thing I thought of in my head.
your
Um,
mum sounds
oh,
great.
yeah, yeah, no prisoners. Um,
Says it how it is.
yeah, and I thought, "Oh God, there we go." Right, so I've done that. And I just thought, well, we've like women, we've been doing this for hundreds of years. Cave women did it, we got the NHS, so this is easy.
Yeah,
So I didn't really maybe take things as seriously as I should have on reflection. I had a bit of low movement, but I'd gone to the hospital and they told me everything was fine. And you don't know, especially as a first time mum, just again winging it really.
yeah.
And I went home and had some pain, so I went to the doctors. It was time of COVID still, so you weren't allowed anyone with you. And I went in and they couldn't find a heartbeat. So I was laying on a hospital bed, and by this time I'm 8.5, 9 months pregnant, so I'm humongous. And I'd suffered with high blood pressure as well, so I was generally humongous. Everything is swollen up.
Mm.
And yeah, I knew it was bad news. I knew it was bad news when she went pale and then started to call more people in, and I thought, this is really not good. And strangely enough, my first thought was, well, they just put me down. That's it. Like you do with like dogs or cats, quality of life. It's not good anymore. Let's put her down. But obviously, as a human, that's not an option. You just have to, especially as a woman, you just got to get on with it. So I was given some tablets to induce birth, and I was told I needed to have a natural birth because that was the best way if I ever wanted to have more kids. And at that time, where you've just lost your whole world, you feel like, well, I just have to do what people say. I just have to,
Didn't question it.
yeah. So I spent 3 days pretty much in bed knowing that my son had died and that I still had to give birth to him. And they were a dark, dark
Oh,
three
I'm
days.
so sorry, Tamsin.
Yeah, it's brought me so much resilience though, and it is a really horrible story. And, I hate the idea of triggering people over it, but I think people just need to talk about it a bit more because it can happen. I never thought, 1 in 4 pregnancies ends in miscarriage or stillbirth, and I just think we don't, as women, support ourselves through that. We've got each other. It's strange. Every time I've opened up about it, either people panic, they don't know what to say. For example, I had one woman say, "Oh, just have another one," like it was just pop down Tesco's. And then other people ask lovely questions. And I think the best thing you can say to anyone in that circumstances was, if they do open up, what was his name? Because it shows that you're trying to be in. It's really hard as a mother without a baby to feel like there's any tangible
Yeah, absolutely.
connection.
Yeah.
And I think that's the one bit of guidance I'd give anyone. If anyone ever talks to you about it, just ask what their child's name was. It makes
What
such a
was his name?
difference. Mason. So yeah, no, it was a real big experience. I'd struggled with my mental health before that, and it kind of made me realise you were struggling with nothing. That was easy. You were feeling sorry for yourself. This is serious.
Yeah.
And I must admit, it's only in the last 18 months that I've managed to start feeling myself. It's taken four
So
4 years.
Mason would have been
He
5.
would have been 5 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
It would have been
So
his 5th
sorry.
birthday.
And so you've only started to sort of come back in the last 18 months.
I was
really?
a nightmare. I fell off the rails. I obviously had two kids with my ex-partner had 2 children, and their mother sent them round 2 days after I'd given birth. Like, there was no prisoners there. It was, "Well, it's your week. Sorry you've lost your kid. Whatever, it's not my problem."
Yeah.
And that was hard to then all of a
Yeah.
sudden go from my world's crashed to I've got to look after other people's children. And unfortunately, they say grief either pulls you together or draws you apart. And yeah, really drew us apart. So then throughout my grieving process, lost my partner and then the two kids as well. They moved out. So it was I was going, when you think about it, I was going into a life of a happy family and gonna have 3 children to
Mm.
just me being in a house by myself. So it
How
was a
how
real big drop on the head.
how did you deal with it?
The unadult side of me fell off the rails for a little bit. Um, I got a cat to try and anchor myself to make sure I had something to get up for, to
Yeah,
get something to feed, someone to look after,
I get that.
and that was really helpful. But really, I've just had to be kind to myself, and I've had to take the time. They say don't blame yourself. That's a lot easier said than done. Um, but it's made me realise what's worth worrying about. And that's probably the way I've got rid of it, is actually not worrying about a lot of stuff that I used to,
Yeah.
and really focusing on what's important and being grateful for what I have. I'm so lucky that I still have my house. I've got my cat. I've got my new partner, and life is good. And
Yeah.
before, I don't think I appreciated how good life was.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you think grief has changed you?
I I would love to be able to say I'm more patient, I'm more kind, I'm more thoughtful. Am I allowed to use slight bad
Of
language?
course.
It just I've got no tolerance of bullshit anymore, really. I don't care. It's not important. And to me, so sometimes I have to catch myself a little bit because I have to be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. It still might be important to other people. You need to remember that.
Mm.
But I don't. I think more of my mum's come out. I don't suffer fools. And I don't see the point of pussyfooting around stuff, being worried about saying stuff. Let's just get on with it.
Yeah.
And because life's too short, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But also it has taught me to be a little bit more aware of what other people might be going through, because you never know what's happening behind closed doors.
Yeah. Do you think it's changed your purpose in life? Is there a new direction now?
Yeah, I obviously for a time I thought, right, that's it. I'm going to be a mother. That's going to be my main focus. And that was the biggest hurdle for me, is having that suddenly removed. And I believe I can still have children, but it's not something I don't think I don't have the confidence to go through that again. That would be the end, as far as I'm concerned. If something happened, I just couldn't do it. And so I've really had to change my purpose from thinking that I'm going to be a family woman to really, what else can I do with my life?
Yeah.
And trying to bring up other people is the way I've gone. So lucky at Wates, I was very kindly asked to be the co-chair of the Wates Women Network. So we've got kind of 600 to 800 members across Wates, and we're trying to build a place where women feel supported and can just voice their opinions and have a selection of resources that are very helpful. And that's especially important in a male dominated environment. And I do get a lot of, oh, well, it's not a problem anymore. Well, the feedback we've had from site-based women when they've said, oh, I'd like to go to a Wates Women event, is, oh, it's just a little girls' club. So it definitely still is a problem. Or why don't we have a club? Start one up then. That's no one stopping you. No one's stopping you. So I do
Yeah.
think it's still important to be able to support each other in the workplace, especially in our industry.
Why do you think you were asked to head that up?
Um, so one of the absolutely great resources that Waits provides is they do a focus on a lot of pregnancy and baby loss. Their policy is great. We also have monthly sessions, like drop-in sessions, no pressure sessions. And I'd attended one of them with SANS, the baby loss charity, because I'd done some fundraising for SANS that was one of the first things I felt like when I was coming out of my grief.
Yeah.
I'd done a bit of fundraising there, and that was really helpful for me personally. And yeah, so I think I was asked because I'd started to get a bit involved. I was asked to have a little look at the resources for managers and for employees, that if one of their colleagues or themselves was going through baby loss, who do they speak to?
Yeah.
What kind of things can they do? And that obviously involved the diversity and inclusion team. And yeah, then they approached me from that.
And how has that helped you? Because I'm sure it's helping lots of other people, but has it helped you as well?
It's made me realise it's okay to talk about. It's made me realise it still makes people uncomfortable, but I just bulldoze my way through that uncomfortableness, and carry on, because I do think it's important to talk about.
Yeah.
But it's really given me the ability to turn something so negative in my
Mm,
life
mm.
and actually turn it into something positive and know that I'm helping other people. One of my favourite ways to remember my son is to go for walks and be out in nature. And I feel like I get followed by robins everywhere, and I always
Aw,
think of him when I see a
when you see a
robin.
robin, yeah,
Yeah,
that's nice.
and I just feel like that is, the other day I was in the woods, and I had to stop because I was like, "What's going on?" And 2 deers ran straight past me. Now I'm a big believer in all of that, of all of the signs, and to me that feels like that's increased over the last year. So I must be doing something right,
Yeah.
spending more time with me.
And what's the one thing that you'd like to get out of the Wates Women's Programme that would, like, make you go, "Yeah, I've really achieved something"?
We're quite a big, well, we're a humongous business. So,
Mm,
we've got people based in Leeds, we've got people based down in London and further afield. what I what would be really important to myself and my co-chair Kerry is we want to have that reach. We want every woman on site to know that there's people they can reach out to if they're struggling. Sometimes it's just having a whinge, would just makes you feel so much better. It just gets it off your chest, especially if you're based on site and it is 90% still men. You can feel very, very isolated.
mm.
And so I think our goal is that nobody feels isolated, that they feel like they might not have their community in their exact workplace where they are, but they've got confidence to do their job, and they know that there's a big group of women or big big group of like-minded people who are there to support them.
Do you think your ambition has changed over the years?
Yeah, it's changed. It was always very money driven, and I always thought money is the main thing. I need the big salary, the big title.
Yeah.
When
But you say that, but you've made changes where you've taken pay cuts because you've known that you weren't on the right
yes,
trajectory,
in the
so
back of my mind with the hope that it would always ultimately go go up, I suppose. But yeah, I feel like that was always still in the back of the mind, that
yeah,
I wanted to get a better position. I've never been, as you say, never shy about taking the cut to get there.
yeah,
But I think losing my son made me realise that life is more than work. Life is more than just working for that paycheck.
yeah.
It's important to go out and experience the world and enjoy it.
And have you purposely done more stuff outside of work
Yes,
since
yeah.
Mason?
Yeah, so very much the I feel like the fundraising challenge was the start of that. It got me out. It forced me. I think I did like 100K in a month or something. So it was a nice gentle. It wasn't a triathlon or a marathon or anything
Yeah.
very impressive people do. But it really got me out of that funk and out of that comfort zone. So
Yeah.
yeah, gardening, nature, and being in touch with the world is very much my thing now.
Yeah.
Which is why it's so important that our developments come forward with a consideration of nature to me.
So your grandma used to sing a certain song to you, didn't she?
Annoy me. Used to annoy as a fierce little girl, used to really annoy me. So she used to always say, "Que sera, sera." And I'm like, oh, she's going on about that again. It won't, what will be, will not be, because I'm in charge. I will do what I want to do. And I will lead my future. And again, realizing when I lost the job, when I lost my son, actually, you have no control. You're on the ride, and you've just got to see it through, get to the end of the roller coaster. And yes, that was a very frustrating as a kid. Though I remember thinking, no, this is not the way the world works. The other one that backs up that same sentiment is there is a song, "Everyone Should Wear Sunscreen" or something like that. It's a dance song. It talks about all the great life advice, and it says worrying is about as useful as trying to solve an algebra equation with bubble gum. And that's the other thing I tell myself. What's the point of worrying? Because
So control the things you can control, but there's
exactly,
lots of things that you can't
yeah,
control.
you've got to learn to leave it.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, what has life taught you about control, do you think?
But I don't think it's as important as we all think it is, maybe. Everything will work itself out in the end. That's hard to say because it didn't certainly work it out with my son. That was an awful experience, and I still, would so much rather have him be here and have been a mother to him. But you've got to make the best of a bad situation.
Yeah. What kind of example do you want to be to others coming through?
I want them to know that they can do it. I want them to know that it doesn't matter if people kind of keep telling you no or keep trying to hold you back. Just keep being you and you will be all right. It might be scary to begin with and 100% just go in it, bravado, confidence. Was it someone said in one of our it was International Women's Day event, and the lady said, best advice I was told was commit to it with the confidence of a 5-year-old in a Batman's t-shirt. I was like, that is great. That's going to be
Stay that one.
very much what you need to do, I think.
Amazing. So I've got some shaping moments questions, which are around the places she shapes.
Okay.
The title of the podcast. So places. You're in a room with everyone you've ever met, dead or alive, excluding your immediate family. Who would you look for first?
Oh, that's a really tricky question.
It's hard, isn't it?
We were talking about this in the office actually the other day. I would say I was very lucky. I was very young and I met Robin Williams, as in the actor.
Oh.
So that's who I choose. But in the office, I presented this as, do you remember Robin Williams from Flubber? Because I was 7 at the time, and then thus that was the most important film he'd ever done. And someone in the office went, "You do realise he's made more films than that, don't you?"
So that's
So
who
I'd
you'd look
probably
for.
ask him about all the other films he's made, yeah.
Love it. The she question. Who's the woman you turn to for advice and why?
I'd say it's definitely my mum. I've struggled having a female mentor at work. Where I've been, there's not been many available. That is changing now. And so hopefully, work wise, there'll be some more females I could ask for advice. But yeah, mostly my mum. She's been a driving force in my life, and
Sounds like it. Yeah. Do you think your career would have been different had you had a female mentor?
Possibly, yes. I do often wonder maybe I would have got a bit further in some of the industries I worked in, and maybe a little bit easier, just knowing how to handle myself in those environments instead of just making up as I've gone along.
Have you had a mentor at all?
Not formally. Not formally, lots of informal mentors, I'd say. Lots of people I feel like I could talk to about anything, 100%. And, I've never been shy at asking a question. I pride myself on that. No, I always say, I'm sorry for my silly question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And that's another thing I try to encourage out of junior members of staff is always ask the question, because ultimately you're showing an interest and that's better than not caring. So what could be worse? Not really, if I'm honest. That's been really, interesting throughout my career.
And final one, shapes. How would you shape your ideal day?
See, my ideal day now will be so much more relaxed than, I'm sure there's people who would go abseiling and do all sorts of crazy cool stuff. I would probably...
You see, mine would start with not setting an alarm.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It would be quite boring.
And I'd probably still get up at 7:30, but it's just not
the pressure to do
it's
so.
just not having the alarm, isn't it?
Yeah. I think having a lovely day outside. So we're doing a lot of work to our house at the minute. So actually having the time to do all the bits I want to do, that would be really nice.
And what would you eat? What would you drink? Would you go out in the evening?
I'd eat pasta and drink all the coffee. This is controversial. I'm not very good at drinking wine, so that's not my jam. I really not going to make myself sound very cool here at all. Big fan of sparkling Vimto, so I'd probably have a nice glass of Vimto in the garden, in the sun, maybe do some gardening.
Amazing. Tamsin, you've been amazing. Thank you so much. It was brilliant.
Thank you.
If you've enjoyed this conversation, follow Places She Shapes wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe on YouTube so you don't miss the rest of season 3.